What happens when the man who burned every bridge decides to come home? The wrestling world just witnessed the impossible become reality, and nothing will ever be the same again. John Moxley, the prodigal son who swore he'd never return, just walked through the forbidden doors of WWE at Survivor Series 2025, and he didn't come alone.
This isn't just a return.
This is a hostile takeover, a declaration of war, and the birth of the most dangerous faction WWE has ever seen.
The arena went completely dark.
Every single light extinguished in an instant, plunging 30,000 fans into absolute silence.
This wasn't a planned blackout. This wasn't part of the show.
The confusion rippled through the crowd like electricity, whispers turning into murmurs, murmurs escalating into nervous chatter.
What's happening? Is this a technical malfunction?
Then, piercing through the darkness like a blade through flesh, came the unmistakable opening riff of Wild Thing by the Trogs.
But this wasn't the version anyone expected.
This was darker, heavier, remixed with industrial undertones that sent chills racing down every spine in attendance. The Titantron flickered to life with static, distorted images flashing across the screen. Glimpses of John Moxley's greatest moments outside WWE, his battles in Japan, his wars in AEW, his blood-soaked victories that made him a legend in every corner of the wrestling universe except the one he abandoned. The images grew more intense, more violent, building to a crescendo that had every fan on their feet, phones raised, cameras recording what they couldn't quite believe was about to happen. Then the question appeared on screen in blood-red letters dripping down like fresh wounds. Did you think I forgot about you? The spotlight hit the entrance ramp, and there he stood. John Moxley, looking more dangerous than ever, his eyes carrying the weight of battles fought in every territory, every promotion, every dark corner of the wrestling world. His gear was different, darker, more militant. This wasn't the unhinged lunatic who left WWE years ago. This was something evolved, something refined, something infinitely more terrifying. He walked with purpose, with calculated menace, his gaze locked on the ring where Roman Reigns stood frozen, title over his shoulder, unable to process what his eyes were telling him. The commentary team lost their minds. Michael Cole's voice cracked with disbelief as he screamed into his headset that John Moxley, Dean Ambrose, the man who publicly denounced WWE and everything it stood for, was standing on the entrance ramp at Survivor Series. Corey Graves questioned reality itself, wondering if this was some elaborate work, some trick of the light.
But this was real. This was happening. And it was about to get so much worse.
Moxley grabbed a microphone, his knuckles white around the steel, his breathing heavy and deliberate through the sound system. The crowd's roar was deafening, a mixture of shock, excitement, and pure confusion. He let them scream, let them chant his name, let them process the impossibility of his presence. Then he raised his hand, and the silence that followed was immediate and absolute. "Did you miss me?" he asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm and venom. "Did you think I was gone forever? Did you think I was happy playing in someone else's sandbox while the place I helped build crumbled without me?" Roman Reigns stood in the ring, microphone in hand, his expression shifting from shock to anger to something resembling respect. The tribal chief, the man who claimed dominion over WWE for years, was face to face with a ghost from his past. "You've got a lot of nerve showing your face here, Mox," Roman finally spoke, his voice steady but laced with tension.
"You walked out.
You abandoned the Shield.
You abandoned me.
And now you want to walk back in like nothing happened." Moxley's laugh was cold and humorless. "Abandoned you? I liberated myself from the corporate machine that tried to turn me into something I'm not."
"But you, Roman, you became everything I despised."
"You became the corporate champion, the handpicked golden boy, the tribal chief who rules with nepotism and fear.
And that's why I'm back.
Not for forgiveness. Not for reconciliation. But for revolution." The tension was suffocating. Every person in that arena could feel the weight of history colliding with the present. These two men shared blood, sweat, and tears in the Shield. They conquered WWE together, revolutionized tag team wrestling, created moments that would live forever in highlight reels. And now they stood on opposite sides of an ideological war that had been brewing for years. But before Roman could respond, before this powder keg could explode, the arena plunged into darkness again. When the lights returned, standing on either side of John Moxley were two figures that made the entire wrestling world gasp in unison. On his right, Seth Rollins, dressed in black tactical gear, his signature smile replaced with a cold, calculating stare. On his left, Bron, the powerhouse prodigy, the heir to the Steiner legacy, looking like a caged animal ready to be unleashed. The three men stood together, united in purpose, forming a triangle of destruction that represented everything WWE had tried to suppress for years. Seth Rollins raised his own microphone, his voice steady and controlled. "Roman, you look confused.
You look betrayed. Good. Now you know how it feels."
The history between Seth and Roman was complicated, years of alliance and betrayal, brotherhood and warfare. "I've been watching from the shadows, watching you parade around as the tribal chief, watching you claim ownership of a company that doesn't belong to you.
And I realized something.
The only way to truly change WWE is to burn it down and rebuild it from the ashes."
Bron Breakker didn't need words. His presence was a statement.
The next generation of dominance, the physical embodiment of power and intensity, standing alongside two of the most dangerous men in wrestling history.
This wasn't just a faction. This was an insurgency.
This was a declaration that the old order was dead and a new era of chaos had begun. The cliffhanger hit at exactly 60 seconds when Moxley spoke his final words before the assault began. "Roman, you wanted to be the tribal chief.
You wanted to be acknowledged?
Well, acknowledge this. Your reign ends tonight, and there's nothing you or your bloodline can do to stop what's coming." That's when all hell broke loose, and the most violent beatdown in WWE history commenced. Could this be the end of the tribal chief era? The question hung in the air for exactly 3 seconds before John Moxley charged the ring like a missile, followed immediately by Seth Rollins and Bron Breakker. The coordinated attack was military precision mixed with unhinged brutality. Roman Reigns, the unstoppable force who had conquered every challenger for years, suddenly found himself outnumbered and overwhelmed by three men who shared a singular purpose: his complete destruction. Moxley hit the ring first, sliding under the bottom rope with the grace of a predator and immediately connecting with a vicious lariat that turned Roman inside out. The impact echoed through the arena, the sickening thud of forearm against chest cavity making fans wince in sympathetic pain. Before Roman could even process the first blow, Seth Rollins was already airborne, launching himself from the top rope with a diving knee strike directly to Roman's skull. The combination was devastating, but it was only the beginning. Bron Breakker entered last, methodically, his massive frame stepping over the ropes with the confidence of someone who knew his victims had nowhere to run. The Usos, Jay and Jimmy, Roman's ever-present backup, sprinted down the ramp to even the odds. But this wasn't a fair fight, and it never would be. Moxley and Rollins intercepted them before they could reach the ring, launching themselves over the top rope with synchronized suicide dives that crashed all four men into the barricade. The crowd erupted, half cheering the spectacular violence, half horrified at the implications of what they were witnessing.
This wasn't wrestling anymore. This was an execution.
Inside the ring, Bron Breakker hoisted Roman Reigns onto his shoulders with frightening ease, the tribal chief's massive frame looking almost small in the grasp of the second-generation powerhouse. Breakker paraded around the ring, showing off his prize to every corner of the arena before driving Roman down with a thunderous power slam that shook the entire structure. The ring buckled under the impact, the canvas rippling outward from ground zero. Roman's body bounced once before going completely limp, his championship belt sliding across the mat, separated from its owner for the first time in what felt like an eternity. Moxley rolled back into the ring, his eyes wild with purpose, and immediately mounted Roman, raining down brutal elbow strikes directly to the bridge of the tribal chief's nose. Blood began to flow almost instantly, crimson streams painting Roman's face in the universal language of warfare. Seth Rollins pulled Moxley off, not to stop the assault, but to tag in himself, delivering a vicious curb stomp that drove Roman's face directly into the steel ring steps that Breakker had dragged into the ring. The sound was nauseating, a wet crunch that made even the most hardcore fans turn away. The bloodline was in complete disarray. Solo Sikoa rushed down the ramp next, the enforcer of the tribal chief coming to defend his leader. But he was met with a synchronized triple-team assault that showcased the new faction's chemistry. Rollins hit a super kick to the jaw, stunning Solo long enough for Moxley to grab him in a rear-naked choke, dropping him to his knees. Bron Breakker finished the sequence with a running spear that nearly cut Solo in half, his body folding like a lawn chair before crumpling to the outside floor. This was the first major plot twist that nobody saw coming. Paul Heyman, the wise man, Roman's counsel and strategist, didn't come to help. Instead, he stood at the top of the ramp, microphone in hand, a knowing smile spreading across his face. The cameras zoomed in on his expression, capturing the moment that would be analyzed frame by frame for weeks to come. Heyman slowly raised the microphone to his lips and spoke words that sent shockwaves through the entire wrestling industry. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul Heyman, and I am no longer the wise man to the tribal chief. I am the advocate for the revolution.
The arena exploded in chaos.
Fans threw their hands up in disbelief, some screaming in outrage, others laughing at the sheer audacity of the betrayal. Paul Heyman, the man who had orchestrated Roman's rise to godlike status, had just aligned himself with the very faction destroying his former client.
This wasn't just a physical assault anymore.
This was a complete systemic dismantling of everything Roman Reigns had built. The bloodline was dead, killed not just by physical violence but by ideological betrayal from within. Moxley, Rollin, and Breakker stood over Roman's broken body, their boots pressing down on his chest, his arms, his legs, a symbolic representation of a new order pinning down the old guard. Heyman walked down the ramp slowly, deliberately, savoring every step of his betrayal. When he reached the ring, he didn't enter. Instead, he simply handed something to John Moxley through the ropes.
A contract.
Not just any contract, but a contract that would change WWE forever. Seth Rollins grabbed Roman by the hair, forcing him to look up at Heyman, forcing him to witness his own advisor's ultimate betrayal. "This is what happens when you stop listening, Roman," Seth hissed. "This is what happens when you become the very thing you swore to destroy. You became Vince's puppet, the company's chosen one. And you forgot what made you dangerous in the first place. We're here to remind everyone what real danger looks like." Bron Breakker delivered one final devastating spear, this one targeted specifically at Roman's ribs, the impact so severe that medical staff immediately began signaling from backstage. But the new faction wasn't done sending messages. Moxley grabbed Roman's championship belt, the universal title that had defined an era, and held it high above his head before dropping it unceremoniously on Roman's chest. "We're not here for your titles," Moxley declared. "We're here to make them irrelevant." The second plot twist came moments later when the lights flickered again, and standing at the top of the ramp was none other than Triple H, the chief content officer, the man running WWE's creative direction. The fans expected him to call for security, to put an end to this chaos.
Instead, he simply nodded.
One single nod of acknowledgement, of approval, of sanctioning what had just occurred. The implication was clear and terrifying. This wasn't a rogue attack. This was orchestrated from the highest levels of WWE management.
The revolution had corporate backing.
The medical team rushed the ring as Moxley, Rollins, and Breakker finally exited, walking up the ramp together with Paul Heyman trailing behind them like a proud father watching his children graduate into violence. The cameras captured every angle of Roman Reigns lying in a pool of his own blood, the tribal chief reduced to a broken warrior, his empire crumbling in real time. The bloodline members lay scattered around ringside like casualties of war, Solo Sikoa clutching his ribs, the Usos barely conscious against the barricades. The segment ended with one final image that would be replayed millions of times across social media. John Moxley, Seth Rollins, and Bron Breakker standing at the top of the stage, arms raised in unity, while behind them on the Titantron flashed the name of their new faction in blood-red letters, The Reckoning.
The message was clear.
WWE, as everyone knew it, was dead. What came next would be built on the ashes of the old order, and nobody was safe from the coming storm.
What happens when the foundation of an empire cracks?
The answer came flooding in through social media, news outlets, and every wrestling platform across the globe within minutes of SurvivorSeries going off the air. The hashtags #TheReckoning and #MoxleyReturns trended worldwide simultaneously, breaking records for wrestling-related content. Fans dissected every frame of the assault, every word spoken, every subtle glance exchanged between the members of this new faction. But the bigger question loomed like a storm cloud over the entire industry. Why did this happen, and what comes next? The following night on Monday Night Raw, the wrestling world tuned in with record-breaking numbers, everyone desperate for answers, for explanations, for anything that would make sense of the chaos they witnessed 24 hours earlier. The show opened not with pyrotechnics or music, but with complete silence. The arena lights were dim, creating an atmosphere of tension and uncertainty. Then, from the speakers throughout the building, came John Moxley's voice, but he was invisible. This was a recorded message, delivered with the calculated precision of a manifesto. 4 years, WWE has been run by the same tired formula. The chosen ones get pushed to the moon while the real fighters, the real warriors, get held back by corporate interests and storyline politics. We watched as talent got wasted, as potential got squandered, as the machine chewed up and spit out anyone who didn't fit the mold. Roman Reigns became the perfect symbol of everything wrong with this system. A manufactured champion, protected by booking, elevated by nepotism, crowned not by merit but by bloodline.
Last night wasn't just an attack. It was a correction.
The reckoning has begun, and we're here to restore the natural order where the strongest survive and the weak get eliminated. The message continued, but now Seth Rollins' voice joined in, creating a dual narrative that bounced between speakers throughout the arena. I spent years trying to change WWE from within. I held every title, main event WrestleMania, did everything the company asked of me.
And what did it get me?
I watched as the same old guard maintained their stranglehold on the top spots while the next generation got lip service and mid-card feuds. When John reached out to me with his vision, I realized something crucial: you can't change a system by playing by its rules. You have to break the system entirely and build something new from scratch. Then Bron Breaker's voice, younger but no less intense, cut through with raw conviction. I'm second-generation royalty. My uncle Scott, my father Rick, the Steiner brothers are legends who built this industry with their bare hands. But when I signed with WWE, I watched as my family's legacy got reduced to nostalgia acts and throwaway references. They wanted me to be another smiling babyface, another generic powerhouse who cuts scripted promos and follows orders.
John and Seth showed me a different path.
A path where legacy means something again. Where intensity isn't choreographed, it's lived. Where the next generation doesn't ask for their spot, they take it by force. The recorded message ended with all three voices speaking in unison, a haunting chorus of revolution. We are the reckoning.
We are not here for your approval. We are not here for your titles.
We are here to dismantle every false idol, expose every corporate creation, and rebuild WWE in the image of what it should have always been, a proving ground where only the truly exceptional survive.
Roman Reigns was just the first domino. Who's next?
The Titantron finally activated, showing live footage from an undisclosed location. The members of the Reckoning sat in what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse, industrial lighting casting harsh shadows across their faces. Paul Heyman stood behind them, hands clasped, looking every bit the mastermind he'd always been. The camera work was gritty, handheld, nothing like WWE's typically polished production.
This felt real, raw, dangerous.
John Moxley leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring directly into the camera. Last night, we sent a message written in Roman's blood.
But that was just the prologue.
See, the bloodline ruled WWE through family ties and political maneuvering. The Judgment Day tried to rule through numbers and intimidation. Every faction before us relied on gimmicks and storylines. We're different. We rely on one simple truth: we're better than everyone else, and we're willing to prove it against anyone, anytime, anywhere. Seth Rollins stood, pacing like a caged predator. Adam Pearce, if you're watching, and I know you are, here's what's going to happen. You're going to give us exactly what we want. Not because we're asking nicely, but because you don't have a choice.
Put us in matches against your top stars. Put us against your champions.
Hell, put us in handicap matches if you think that'll stop us. Because every single time, we're going to do exactly what we did to Roman. We're going to expose them, break them, and prove that your heroes are nothing but paper champions. Bron Breakker remained seated, but his intensity was palpable even through the screen. I've heard the whispers backstage. People saying I'm too young, too inexperienced to be in a faction with legends like Mox and Seth. Those people are going to learn very quickly why I was chosen. I'm not here to be molded or developed or brought along slowly. I'm here because I'm already one of the most dangerous men in this company, and aligned with these two, I'm unstoppable. To every wrestler in that locker room, if you step to us, bring an ambulance, because you're going to need it. Paul Heyman finally spoke, his voice carrying the weight of decades of professional manipulation. Ladies and gentlemen, I have represented the very best this industry has ever seen.
Brock Lesnar,
CM Punk,
Roman Reigns, each one a monster in their own right. But what you're witnessing now is something unprecedented.
John Moxley possesses an unmatched ability to adapt and survive in any environment. Seth Rollins is the most complete wrestler of his generation, capable of both architectural planning and spontaneous brutality. Bron Breakker is the future realized in the present, third-generation excellence with first-generation hunger. Together, they don't just represent the reckoning. They are the reckoning of every inflated ego, every undeserving push, every corporate decision that put profit over pure competition. Back in the arena, the live crowd's reaction was split. Some fans chanted, "This is awesome," embracing the chaos and the promise of unpredictability. Others chanted, "We want Roman. loyal to the tribal chief despite his brutal beatdown. But everyone was engaged, everyone was invested, everyone understood that WWE had fundamentally changed overnight. The Raw locker room appeared on split screen, showing current champions and top stars watching the broadcast with expressions ranging from concern to outright fear. The third and final major plot twist dropped like a nuclear bomb when the warehouse feed suddenly changed angles, revealing someone else sitting in the shadows behind the reckoning. The figure stood and walked into the light, and the collective gasp from the live audience could probably be heard in the parking lot.
It was Sami Zayn.
Not just any version of Sami, but the hardcore, intense version from his indie days, the El Generico edge restored. He'd been playing the lovable underdog for years, but standing with the reckoning, he looked reborn.
Sami spoke with a voice that carried years of frustration. You all fell for it.
The comedy act, the hugs, the emotional storylines.
You thought that was the real me.
But I never forgot what it took to survive on the independent circuit, what it took to become one of the best wrestlers on the planet before WWE sanitized me.
John didn't just recruit Seth and Bron. He reminded me who I really am.
And now, the reckoning has its strategist, the one man who knows every weakness of every person in that locker room because they trusted me, confided in me, thought I was their friend. Every secret I learned, every insecurity I witnessed, it's all weaponized now. The revelation of Sami Zayn as the fourth member sent shockwaves because of the implications. He'd been integrated into multiple storylines, trusted by Roman's bloodline at one point, friends with numerous roster members. His betrayal wasn't just physical, it was psychological warfare on a massive scale. Paul Heyman smiled like the devil himself, clearly having orchestrated this long-game deception from the beginning. The warehouse feed cut out, replaced by a simple message on the Titantron, December 16th, the first purge. No explanation, no context, just a date 3 weeks away that would allow speculation and anticipation to build to a fever pitch. The implications were ominous.
What was the first purge? Was it a match? An event?
A systematic targeting of multiple wrestlers? The vagueness was intentional, designed to keep everyone off balance. Adam Pearce, WWE's general manager, finally appeared on screen, clearly under immense pressure. His suit was disheveled, his expression haggard.
What happened at SurvivorSeries was unprecedented.
The board has been in emergency meetings all day trying to figure out how to respond. John Moxley, Seth Rollins, Bron Breakker, and apparently Sami Zayn have declared war on WWE itself. Normally, I'd suspend them indefinitely, strip them of opportunities, make an example.
But Triple H has made it clear that this is a different situation. So here's what's going to happen.
At WWE's next premium live event, we're implementing a new match concept called the Reckoning Rules. It'll be a 4-on-4 elimination match, and if the Reckoning loses, they are banned from WWE forever. But if they win... Pearce paused, the weight of his next words visible in his expression. They get complete creative control over 1 month of WWE programming. The stakes had just escalated beyond anything in WWE's history. This wasn't about championships or personal rivalries anymore.
This was about control of the entire company.
The reckoning had forced WWE's hand into betting everything on a single match.
The question now was who would dare step up to oppose them?
Who in that locker room had the courage, the skill, and the death wish necessary to stand against 4 of the most dangerous men in professional wrestling? The show ended with footage of Roman Reigns being loaded into an ambulance at a local hospital, his condition still unknown, his future uncertain. The tribal chief era had ended not with a bang but with a brutal, systematic dismantling. And as the ambulance doors closed, the camera caught a glimpse of something that would fuel conspiracy theories for weeks. Roman's eyes were open, and they burned with a fury that suggested this story was far from over. The reckoning might have won the battle, but the war had only just begun, and every single person on the WWE roster now had to make a choice: join the revolution, oppose it, or get crushed beneath it.